Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mack Story.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast, where I'm continuing to share with you a 30-part series on my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Supervision, Unleash Your Team's Potential. So today we're talking about Chapter 25, Part 25 of 30. And Chapter 25 is titled, Focus on Your Leaders. And the subtitle for this chapter is when you lead leaders, you also lead their followers. That's a pretty big deal. When you're just leading followers and they're not really high impact leaders, remember all of us are leaders somewhere on the scale of 1 to 10. But I'm saying a follower would be somewhere on the low end of that scale, and a high impact leader would be somewhere on the upper end. So when you're leading high impact leaders, high impact people, they're also motivating, inspiring, and influencing other people. So sometimes when we get too tangled up in worrying about having a tribe of people following us, makes us feel special as the leader or just as an individual. High impact people, not looking for just a massive group of followers. I'd rather spend my time investing in leaders of people than just having a big tribe of followers. That's why I'm excited about the opportunity to write books and to do podcasts and to do video series. And by the way, if I haven't mentioned before, if you go to youtube.com/c/Mack Story, MackStory, you'll get to my YouTube channel. And I have a 30-part video series on all of my blue collar leadership books and a couple of others. Just finished the 30-part video series on my new book, Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the 5 components for building high performance teams. And that book's been very well received. A CEO, Mike Huff of GAT Airline Ground Support. He's a phenomenal leader at the CEO level. He's got a team of about 5,000 people, pretty much in all the 50 states, or at least 48 states, maybe not 50, but maybe 50, pretty much all of the United States and much of Canada. And he leads that big team of 5,000 or so people. But he read the book, and he's already purchased 600 copies of Blue Collar Leadership and Culture. And we just recently spoke to his top 100 and 120 leaders in his organization. And when we got off stage, Mike came up and said, "Hey, we're getting 5,000 copies of Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. We're going to get a copy for everyone in the company." So Mike's a super high impact leader, and he's focused on his leaders. And that's what this episode is about. So Robert Half says this. He says, "There's something more scarce than ability. It is the ability to recognize ability." And that's one of the things it's one of the chapters in Blue Collar Leadership and Culture. I know I'm talking about Blue Collar Leadership and Supervision here, this series, but I want to mention that because it's one of the things in the culture book. One of the chapters is identify your culture champions. And what I'm talking about is what I'm saying right here in this episode. The leaders, your culture champions are your leaders. They're the ones who are influencing more and more people. But the problem is a lot of leaders who are not developing themselves, they can't identify the culture champions because they don't know what they look like, because they're not that themselves. I've been in organizations where I'll hear leaders, formal authority leaders in the organization, they're looking for leaders. They say, "We just can't find any people to fill these leadership positions. Any good people." That's what they always say. And I'm always like, There's good people all over. I remember one instance, I'm like, I know the guy. He's on a forklift. He shouldn't be on a forklift, but he's on a forklift. But the leader, they couldn't see it. The leader I'm talking about, they didn't study leadership development. They just come in and focused on doing the job. They don't understand about leadership. What he was talking about is they couldn't find a good boss. They couldn't find good dictators of people, because that's the kind of person the person I was talking to was. He was more of a dictator. So he's looking for a dictator to join his team, not a high impact leader. So that's one huge reason to grow and develop yourself as a leader. If you're not growing and developing, studying, reading, leadership development, personal growth, you're probably missing out on a lot of leaders in your organization, and you're not attracting those type of leaders, because who we are ultimately is always who we attract. I mean, it's so funny to hear people say it all the time. We just can't find good people. Anybody who's saying they just can't find good people, there's a reason. Go check out the mirror. That's why you can't find good people. Because you never find people saying, leaders who say we can't find good people. They're not the leaders who are growing and developing the people on a consistent basis, long term. I meet those leaders. They're attracting great people all the time. Those who are saying we just can't find good people, well, they're usually not developing any people. That's why good people don't want to come there. All right, so back to focusing on your leaders. Unfortunately, most leaders tend to be reactive and focus on their low performers. And those are low impact leaders who are focusing on their low performers because they don't know what they don't know. However, high impact leaders are proactive instead of reactive. And they focus on their top performers. So let's talk about this a little bit. When I say low impact leaders, remember I'm talking about managers of people. So managers of people focus on their low performers. Managers like to be in charge. They like to control everything. They like to flex their positional muscle of authority. And as a result, they do what comes naturally to them. They look for those who are not following orders or performing as they think they should be. And then they spend a lot of time and energy trying to get them to get with the program. Because if someone's not following and doing what they're supposed to, in their eyes, they're not being a good leader. However, a high impact leader would understand maybe this person shouldn't be on my team. First, I'm going to try to develop them. Then if I can't develop them, that means they don't value what I value. And then I'm going to get those folks off the team. That's a different mindset, though. That's a high impact leadership mindset. Low impact leaders, they focused on getting them with the program. So high impact leaders, they do exactly the opposite. They focus heavily on their top performers. They also do what comes naturally to them, work where they have the most influence. See, if someone's not on board, someone's not following, that means the leader doesn't have a lot of influence. And a high impact leader understands that. And they're doing a lot of other stuff too. But they like to influence people who are making things happen, because those people have influence with others on the team that will help them make things happen, meaning they'll help the leaders make things happen. So one thing I suggest is the way I would do it, and I did do it when I was leading teams. I suggest high impact leaders should invest 80% of their available time for team development with their top leaders. And that goes totally against the grain of what a low impact leader would think. They think spend 90% of their time with the low performers because they're not performing. But I say put 80% of your available time with the top leaders in your organization. And I'm not talking about people in a position of authority. I'm talking about your top influencers, the people who are on board. These people should be your top formal authority leaders, but they may be driving a forklift. But if you invest time growing and developing these people, the person on the forklift who should be driving a forklift probably won't be driving a forklift in the future. That person would be moved up into the leadership, formal authority leadership ranks if they want it. But even if they don't want it, if they're still a high impact individual, you should be spending time with them because they have a lot of influence, positive influence with your team. And then I say spend 15% of the time you have left with those in the middle of the pack. Spend 15% with them. Because, see, you're spending 80% with your top leaders, top influencers in your organizations. So they're going to be out among the middle of the pack people. They're the ones that's going to pull those people along and move them over to help them get aligned with the company's mission and vision and values and unifying purpose and all that sort of stuff. But you need to be out there with those folks too. But not all the time. About 15% of your available time. And then spend about 5% with the lowest performers. Not much, because they're low performers for a reason. They ain't interested in performing. So you need to spend about 5% making sure you're doing your part to try to bring them over, develop them, that sort of thing. But if they don't want to come, you need to know who they are. You need to know it without a doubt, because these people are toxic to your team. So you need to know who the toxic people are. And if you want to be a high impact leader, you once you've invested time in developing yourself, so you understand you're where you need to be, and you've spent time investing, growing and developing these low performers, and they just not interested in performing, then you got to do the high impact leadership thing, and you got to get rid of the contamination on your team. So you and your team will be much more productive when you invest your time with the right people instead of wasting your time with the wrong people. It's just a high impact leadership trait. Invest your time with the top performers. They're going to transform your organization. They're going to lead others. And if you spend a low impact leader who spends a majority of their time focused on the low performers and neglect their high performers, they think, well, I just neglect them. They're already doing great. Well, they're going to end up doing great somewhere else because they feel neglected in your organization. So focus on your top dogs out there. And when you directly lead the leaders, you're always indirectly leading their followers. That's another reason you focus on the most influential people in the organization, because they have tons of influence and they're out there all the time with their team. Bob Chapman had this to say, and Bob Chapman, he's the author of the book Everybody Matters, and he's a big dog CEO at Barry Waymiller. They're doing amazing things. Bob is an amazing individual at the CEO level. But Bob says this. He says, everyone wants to contribute. Trust them. Leaders are everywhere. Find them. Some people are on a mission. Celebrate them. Others wish things were different. Listen to them. Everybody matters. Show them. Or actually, he said everyone matters. Show them. And that's pretty powerful. What he's talking about, though, is focus on your leaders. So we're on chapter 25 today. Got a few more to go. We'll finish up this series on blue-collar leadership and supervision. I hope by now, if you've been listening for a while, you've gotten this book, because it is full of some nuggets, and a lot more than I share on the podcast. But the thing about the book is you can slow down, you can go through, and it's full of nuggets that I've mined from other books. It's full of nuggets that I've mined from experiences. It's got stories that I'm not sharing with you here. So go get that book. Either if you're a formal authority leader or you're inspiring to be a formal authority leader, definitely you need to dive in that book. And if you're a leader of leaders, you need to take your leaders through a book study. You know, it's one of the things that I see. A lot of times people who do a good job, especially in the blue collar world, people who do a good job are just promoted. They're simply promoted because they do a great job, and then they're expected to lead without ever having any leadership development. So if you're a leader of leaders and you're not helping those leaders understand how to lead their teams, you're letting them down. That's your job. And no one may have ever done that with you. What's that got to do with you, though? What's that got to do with you developing you as a leader? I hear people all the time, I wish my company had invested in me. I wish my company had sent me to this training or that training, or I wish my company would bring you in more. That's just an excuse for me not to do what I need to do. You with me? You can grow and develop yourself to whatever level you want. You don't need someone else. You're doing it right now listening to this podcast. But I'm saying, if you're a leader of other leaders, your responsibility is to develop those people. All right? Hope you enjoyed this episode. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mack Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mack's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.